All right, everybody. Thanks so much for listening to Fire Breathing Rob. If you're listening to us on YouTube, please like, subscribe, and share. We greatly appreciate that. We're really trying to pump the numbers up on that. If you're listening to us on the Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Spotify, Google, we appreciate that. And definitely like and subscribe also. If you're listening to us on another platform, thanks so much for listening. But definitely like, subscribe, and share. We have Earl Brown on again, a virologist from the University of Ottawa. He's been on before, and he's got so much information on COVID-19 and the issues that deal with it. And we're grateful to have him back on. Earl, thanks so much for coming on. Greatly appreciate your time today.
Good to be here, Rob.
So can we talk about Delta variant in general and how really contagious it is compared to the first type of COVID variant?
Sure. So if we're talking about COVID-19, that's a disease caused by a virus. The virus is SARS coronavirus 2. And so it came out of China. The first people got infected. They noticed right away everybody's got these bad pneumonias. And so the virus gets right down in your lung, wall-to-wall, solid pneumonias, also spreads around your body somewhat. But, you know, most of the people are dying from severe pneumonia, ended up in ICU. And so these variants are genetic mutants of the virus that have enhanced properties. So the first one was alpha. You know, they started in the Greek alphabet. So alpha came out of the UK, hit them pretty hard, put more people in the hospital, 50% more mortality, and the vaccines work, but not quite as well on it. So alpha takes over, everybody gets alpha, but then there's a bunch of other variants coming out of the woodwork. And so the variants are competing. The strongest one's Delta variant. Delta pushes out alpha, and Beta and Gamma didn't push out alpha either on their own, but Delta dominated. So we got Delta variant all over the planet essentially right now. Eurasia is full of it. South America's got some of it. North America's pretty much all Delta now. You know, the numbers are past 80%. And Delta is quite a lot stronger than alpha in that it spreads a whole lot better. So Delta spread to about 3 or 4 people. Alpha spread to 3 or 4 people on each infection. Delta is double that. It's 8 to 10 people get infected for every one person. Now that's because when the Delta virus gets into your respiratory tract, up your nose, back of your throat, there's 1,000 times more virus in a person infected with Delta than somebody infected with the first strain of SARS-2. So this virus grows a whole lot better. It's got a bunch of mutations in its genes that make it able to infect your cells better, makes more virus, gets through your body, causes more severe disease. And so people are getting sicker faster. So generally it's 8 days. So you get infected, but 8 days after that, you've had your infection and you're getting better or you're getting worse. And then the next 8 days, you're going to the hospital or ICU, that sort of thing. Well, the Delta agent does it in 6 days. So 6 days, everything's faster. So it makes you sicker, more than twice the death rate, more than twice the hospitalization rate. And so it's a real problem. And so it's, and then the vaccine works on it, but not as well. So the earlier strain, the first strain, 95% effectiveness on these mRNA vaccines. If you take Delta, the number goes down to 88%. So it's still in the game, but 12% of the people can get infected, and they can spread virus. So like 1,000 times more virus in the back of your throat. Delta virus is coming out of people who are even vaccinated. So you're getting vaccinated people spreading it, though most vaccinated people are protected against getting it. And then if you're unvaccinated, well, it's hitting you just that much harder. It spreads really well, puts more people in the hospital. We're seeing a lot of young people end up in the hospital because they're not vaccinated. And so this virus is stronger, anybody who gets it. And young people are showing up because they're unvaccinated. Nobody under 12's got the vaccine, it's not licensed. So yeah, Delta is much stronger virus, more disease, more spread, more of a problem.
What would you do as far as going out? Because it's all scary, because just even if you're vaccinated, you can still get sick. If you wouldn't die probably, but you would still get sick.
Yeah, so if you're going out to stores, public places, that sort of thing, you want to keep the same procedures you did before. So the procedures before was the 6 foot distancing, the hand wash, mask cuts down transmission, especially the amount that comes out of somebody who's sick, and it protects you a little bit from getting infected. So if it's in the air, you're protected somewhat by the virus. So it's mainly less transmission. So with the Delta that spreads better, you want to keep all those procedures going. And so the distance, if you could have a greater distance, greater protection. Now, I'm not sure about double masking, triple masking, but probably going to, you know, a surgical grade mask. You know, they're just the square mask, but they're made to a standard, right? It's what the physicians wear in the hospital generally.
The computer went down, Earl.
But, oh, okay, sorry. Just got a little bit of a wind going here, yeah. Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So yeah, so you've got the high spread from this virus, and the masks are somewhat beneficial in that regard. But go to a surgical mask instead of your home knitted ones, or you know, a single piece of cloth is not going to cut it. You're just not fooling anybody there. But you know, you can make your homemade with the 3 layers of cloth that they tell you and that sort of thing, and you're in the game. But wear a decent mask. In the hospital, when they're doing like putting tubes into people, when the spray's going everywhere, they're wearing the N95s. They got to do that. But day to day, they're wearing the surgical mask, just the triangle on your face. And so, but I'm saying, if you got the Delta, don't back off on these things. You got to double down, which means wear them more often in more situations. When you're going into stores or into closed spaces with people, for sure, wear your mask. Hand washing is good, but you know, for the beginning, they thought it seemed to be contact spread, but it's more aerosol spread. And it's not, your hands don't spread it, but they don't spread it very often. But I'm not saying don't wash your hands. I'm just saying that that's a smaller part of the story. You know, so you can get the hand contact spread. Just to tell you a story, Chinese, if you send anything into China now from outside China, you have to swab all the outside of your boxes and have a test of it, because some of the workers in China have got infected from packaging, from industrial stuff shipped across. So you can get the virus from the surface into your body, but numbers wise, it's not that big probability of your infection. It's generally the aerosol. It's breathing the aerosol from someone else who's infected is the main way you're going to get infected. So the mask is really important. The distance really important. And hand washing is important too. It's just not as important. And, you know, the vaccine is really good. So like vaccinated people in Canada, we meet indoors. If everybody in the group's vaccinated, we can meet indoors and have a dinner sort of thing. But if anybody's unvaccinated, everybody masks up. Or if you're out in the street, in stores and stuff, you mask up.
So let me ask you this then. That kind of concerned me because I never heard that about the, you know, the packaging. So, you know, we have Amazon here, and I'm sure you have Amazon too, right over there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we have Amazon all the time, but maybe I should just backtrack on the packaging. That's mainly cold pack stuff. So it's frozen fish, frozen food. That's
okay. Because I was worried because you think back and say you ordered a piece of clothing and it came from China.
And people were spraying down their boxes and stuff. Not necessary, no. But if you've got a package of beef or fish that was in a cold package in a factory, was kept frozen the whole time and sent across, that's the place that they have the problem.
Okay,
so the frozen cold chain of food, they did transmit some.
Okay, so if you ordered, go ahead.
But don't worry about the surface of a package. When you go to the grocery store or you buy something from Amazon, don't sweat that packaging.
Have you heard any of these new reports that, you know, them saying that they think that there was a bat inside that lab that got infected? We're even here in China now blaming the U.S. military, saying that this started in North Carolina in an army base. So can you kind of get through a little bit of this? Because again, it goes to, you know, all this stuff that we don't know what the heck to believe anymore, because you're seeing the U.S. side say this, the Chinese side say this, some doctors in the U.S. saying that it's a lab leak, some saying it's not. You know, it's really tough to get a hold of this. Do you feel like more is going to come out, or what is your opinion on this?
Yeah, so we talked about the pros and cons, the lab leak story, and the fact that, you know, the outbreak starting, you know, just a kilometer from this lab in their high containment lab in China. Like circumstantial evidence suggests, well, gee, maybe there's a link there. You know, like there's their big containment lab. They work with coronavirus and bats there and that sort of thing. And so, yeah, it becomes more of a, maybe that could have happened, but they just don't have any really data that this virus was in the lab before the outbreak showed up and that sort of thing. Mind you, that being said, like, I think I can't remember who your politicians were, but they brought a document to the government and they laid out some new data, which I hadn't heard before, which was that the Chinese government had wiped some of their computers and wiped a bunch of data. And so that really got my attention. Like, and I know that China, I've been in China a little bit over doing some work there and stuff. And I know that they have complete control of information in that country and lots of censorship and, you know, stuff doesn't get circulated that the government doesn't want to get circulated. If they don't want it circulated, they wipe the internet of it. And so I was a little curious to hear that they had a wipe of data supposedly relating to the labs, supposedly around the timeline of the outbreak starting. And so that got my attention peaked. But then again, that's more circumstantial evidence. I want to know, what did they wipe? What was the data? And so really what you want to do is go in there and read their computers, what's in their freezers, all that sort of stuff to know what's going on, which is pretty tricky to do. That's a forensic audit of their labs. And then you come to the point that, well, the Chinese are saying that the US made it in their bioweapons program. The US, you know, they signed the bioweapons treaty, but the US interprets the treaty different than other countries and said, yeah, we're not going to make any fatal bioweapons. We're just going to make non-fatal bioweapons. And so China says, well, yeah, whatever you made, it was SARS coronavirus 2. You dropped it outside of our lab to make it look like it was us. You know, so the Chinese are saying, we want to look at and we want to do forensic audit of labs, you know, the Colorado labs and you know, got various labs, Fort Detrick, you know, places where they do biodefense, bioweapons work in the U.S. So yeah, it's a tricky one. The answer is not there. We don't know where SARS coronavirus 2 came from, other than the closest smoking guns were bats in the south of China. Anyways. Well, the problem is that China's not transparent, and they're not transparent within the country to their own people. And so that's just a fact. And when it first showed up, they had the optometrist, ophthalmologist, who Dr. Lee, who got infected, and he was given the alarm bells. He got arrested. And they sent out a directive right away. Nobody should report about anything about this new pneumonia. Nothing to be put out about it. But all these ophthalmologists, and I think it's because they do eye tests, they're right in the face of patients. A whole bunch of them got infected right away. You know, they're some of the first doctors to get infected. But the government came down heavy, and the government has a whole codified way of doing disease control reporting in China. And they count the cases. If you have like 9 to 30 cases, it's like it's a local deal. You don't have to be told, but once it hits 100, you got to tell Central Command, and like you got to spill the beans. So you have all this suppression of cases. It goes on every time for every outbreak in China, because every local province is trying to keep their numbers down on whatever. And so there's a lot of jiggery pokery goes on early on. They're trying to keep it out of the light, and then if they can't, they can't. But yeah, that unfortunately that goes on all the time in China. And then when you've got something really bad like COVID-19, they've been doing some messing around in the background. You're not sure how deep the messing around is. That's where it's very hard to interpret what goes on, which is what we've been just talking about for a few minutes here.
Yeah, I was told their vaccines are pretty bad also.
Well, the Chinese vaccines are a little weak right now. The Sinovac and Sinopharm, Sinovac is just 50% effective on the first strain, and the Sinopharm is better, 70% or so. But quite a few countries that use the Sinovac are having more trouble with outbreaks right now. So they're thinking it's a bit of a weak vaccine.
Were you concerned? It seems like it's getting better, but Big Pharma in this country wasn't releasing a lot of vaccines to a lot of poorer countries that couldn't afford it. We're even seeing the price as far as the vaccines right now, the prices as far as Pfizer and I guess Moderna also are extremely high for these, underdeveloped countries who can't get the vaccines. I know President Biden did push some vaccines to different countries, but we're seeing these big pharma countries really pump the price up for the vaccines, which concerns me because if we don't get this under control in these, obviously we want to get it to control in the developed countries, but if we don't get it in control in these underdeveloped countries, the strands, I feel like, will just keep, going and going and going, and we'll never get this thing under control. So does that concern you as far as big pharma in this country?
Yeah, well, it's always a tricky problem because pharmaceuticals are made by industry, not made by governments. And so they have to make a profit. So and then you have to talk about, well, what's a fair profit?
Well, I was told, though, just to interrupt, Earl.
Yeah.
I was told that the mRNA has been researched for a long time, and it was being researched even on the AIDS epidemic. And this was a lot of this mRNA vaccine. These were produced really by the government of the United States. Is that untrue?
Well, you can say that a good amount of the research is funded by the government.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. So that goes for pretty much all the drugs. Since you always have that disconnect. The governments fund research finds new drugs, pharmaceuticals make them and sell them to you. But the guys who do the most of the work, the lab work to make the new drugs, is publicly funded, and but then the production of the drug is privately funded. And so that's always the tricky dilemma there. But there is a disconnect, and then the pharmaceuticals make the profits. They control, they have the patents, right? And they control the whole product line. So you do have a bit of a disconnect, and it's tough to get that straight because you can't have governments making drugs. But that's a recipe for disaster. Those can be the most expensive drugs in the world, and you're gonna have to live with all the problems and that sort of thing. But yeah, no, you do have the issue that you have to have drug vaccines that are affordable for the rest of the world. But it's tricky. Well, the U.S. has very strong vaccine nationalism, so they bought vaccines and they are distributing to other countries, but not after every American who wanted a vaccine got one. And so then they're releasing offshores. But every country does that. So Canada, we over-ordered because everybody over-ordered. Europe, U.S. and Canada bought about 5 times as much vaccine as they needed because they didn't know which one of the companies was going to work. They essentially all worked because they got a ton of product. But now that has to be let go to other countries because like less than 10% of the rest of the world has been vaccinated, whereas you've got everybody who's wanted a vaccine out right now, about 70% in most countries are vaccinated. But that is a shortcoming that has to be addressed. Right now, it will take 3 years to make enough vaccine to vaccinate everybody in the world. And so that's too long. We don't have enough vaccine supplies. They're expensive. And the story's even worse. The mRNA vaccines, Pfizer said, we're getting pandemic pricing right now. So some countries are paying $30, some paying $50 for a shot, which is expensive for a shot. And they said, well, no, that's price reduced. When the pandemic is over, you're going to have post-pandemic pricing. The price is going to go up. So it's not going in the right direction, Robert.
Is it too early to tell that this is going to be like a new normal, like a flu vaccine?
Well, it looks like COVID's not going to go away. It's a strong virus. It's really keeps spreading. So I think we're probably going to need a booster shot like influenza, either the same strain or a different strain as we go along. And as more of us are immune, hopefully we have less, severe infections, severe, ICUs and deaths. But I think this virus is part of our list of viruses now. And hopefully it doesn't just keep throwing off these variants, because the variants we're getting now are aggressive. And we don't want to see that sort of pattern. It's a bit surprising, but viruses evolve depending on their environment. Right now, these aggressive viruses suit our environment. We're a bunch of soft targets. We're, kept alive by our healthcare system. A lot of us would have died from infections the last 50 years. So, a lot of us are weak targets for infection. So I think we're an easy prey for the virus right now.
So you think that there could be even stronger variants on the rise than this Delta?
That's the concern, and I can't tell what we're going to get from. But we've got Alpha and Delta, which each one has amped up the killing and the spreading. And then you're hearing stories about Lambda in South America, which they're saying some are worried that it can avoid the vaccines better than the other variants. But those are worries right now. But we're seeing a lot of Lambda variant in South America, and it's just starting to show up, you know, on our shores and that sort of thing. But we won't know till we see it. But the concern is it's got a lot more possibilities to become a worse problem, I guess. But that being said, we're vaccinating. That toughens us up, right? So.
Yeah, but it's still scary if it
Well,
could get even worse.
we don't want to keep it getting tougher, you know, because it will push against the vaccines.
So,
And then those of us who don't vaccinate as well, who have problems, cancer, and the rest of it, are the ones who are going to end up in ICU still and that sort of thing.
right, the immunosuppressive people, we're worried about those people, right?
Yeah, the ones who we can't really protect with the vaccine well, yeah.
The question is, and where I feel skeptical is, we just talked about big pharma money and how much profits they're making on this vaccine. What I'm worried about is that this booster shot could just be a big profit margin, that we already have these 2 shots. They're extremely effective over 6 months. And I was told this even could be for years, that these vaccines could be pretty effective as far as the mRNA ones. So doesn't it make you think a little bit that this could be a money grab by big pharma, that they're trying to push the booster shots when the WHO and the NIH says that, you know, let's put a pause on these booster shots right now. We don't need this right now. Let's not try to push this out and say, you know, we need 3rd shots when people don't even have 1 for that matter. Now they could have, you know, hypothetically, they could already have 2. They just personally don't want it. But, you know, why are we pushing these out? So it just makes me skeptical when we're seeing these big health organizations in the US say that, you know, put the pause on this. Let's not do this right now.
Yeah, so I think big pharma has a profit motive, right? They have to make a profit, and so you have to always be concerned about that incentive. What's pushing them, right? Is it profit or is it healthcare? And then, but as you said, that the health regulatory organizations have said, well, no, 2 shots is protecting us good right now. And so, but the problem is right now is just a moment in time, and these variants keep popping up. And so, and then new vaccine indications are they're pretty strong and they're going to last for a while, but how long will they keep us protected? So those are things that we're learning as we go, right? Vaccine's been out in people for since last December. So we're just counting down at 8 months now, right? So, you know, so we're just learning as we go. But let's say the vaccine starts to get weak after 9 months or 12 months. Well, then you start to think about a booster. But then let's say it doesn't get weaker after a year or year and a half, then you don't need the booster. So it's partly a moving target, like the understanding of how long the immunity lasts. And then also just where's the virus? Does the virus keep changing? Are we going to deal with the Delta variant or some other Lambda variant or something? And so you have to assess this as you go. But I would say today, 2 shots does it. And it's saying that 2 shots does it. Well, it doesn't do it quite as well as it does with the Delta variant as it did before with previous variants. But we're still in the game and pretty well, you know, keeping people out of hospital, keeping people up from dying. But if that starts to change, well, then maybe you're going to need a 3rd shot. Now, that being said, some people need a 3rd shot today. And we allude to those as well. People who have immune suppression, difficulty with the immune system, they're fighting arthritis, and they have drugs that they take to quiet down their immune system, because a lot of arthritis is your immune system attacking your joints. You take a drug to quiet your immune system. Well, that makes you more susceptible to the disease, makes your vaccines not work as well. Those people need a 3rd shot. And not all of them benefit by the 3rd shot. It's only like a 1/3 or so now get in the game and get a good immune response. But a 1/3 of people who didn't respond before are responding after 3 doses is still good, especially if you're one of those people. And so there's a need for 3 shots on some people, but that's a medical decision for a personal situation. But right now, 2 shots is good for our populations. And but as you said, you have to be concerned if a pharmaceutical tells you need a 3rd shot. Are they trying to make $5, or are they trying to keep you more healthy? But then your FDA and your CDC is going to say, well, we've looked at the data, and yeah, we agree with them. Or right now they said, no, we don't agree with it. Because Pfizer came and said, you know, we'd like to look at doing licensing for a 3rd shot. for a booster, and they said no, it's not warranted, and that's where we are right now.
You know, what does that really mean, though, that they're licensed by the FDA? Because they were giving out shots before they were personally licensed by the
Yeah.
FDA.
Yeah, so we've got emergency licensing right now. It's emergency use. And so we're in the middle of a pandemic. We got a vaccine. They did a shorter safety testing. Normally safety testing is 2 years. Most of the, for a vaccine. And so most of the problems show up in the first 6 weeks, but they do a full 2-year review of adverse events. And so they gave emergency use after the 6-week, 8-week safety data came in and the efficacy data. But now they want more review of the data, longer time, more numbers, the rest of it. And then FDA will or won't give full licensure for the vaccines. And so all the indications are they will license them. There haven't been anything found out that says they won't, but it hasn't happened yet. And so when all the T's are crossed, all the I's are dotted, they'll say, yes, this is a fully FDA license, and move beyond the emergency use category.
Well, actually, 2 questions. You know, you spoke about the mRNA vaccine and, you know, how long it lasts in your body. Obviously, we don't know to the exact amount. We know that throughout time, it gets weaker and goes down in percentile. Can you talk about that a little bit in depth, the mRNA vaccine? Because is there, like, you know, say it's 2 years it lasts, or even a year, or whatever it may be, 14 months, whatever it may be. Is there a time where that vaccine will totally leave your body and, you know, you'll be, you know, it'll be gone, period?
Yeah, so the mRNA vaccine, so it's the coding for the spike protein. So it's an mRNA, ribonucleic acid. They inject it in your body. Your body makes the protein in the cells, just like we do with mRNAs. And the immune system makes the antibodies and the killer T cells and the helper T cells and all the rest of the immune system that's targeted to this spike protein. And what they find, they look at the lymph nodes, that's where under your armpits and that sort of thing, next to where you're injected. And they find that those are full of memory cells. So your T cell, your immune system has a memory, and the cells that keep the memory are called memory cells. And so they see there's lots of memory cells there. You got lots of memory cells, they never forget. Mm-hmm. Your memory cells are going to remember your COVID spike protein until you die. They're there. And so they're ready to be mobilized if you get a COVID infection again. You made a whole bunch of antibodies at the same point from your B cells. And so you're immune early on. And then the big question is, how long do you stay immune, the circulating immunity? Right now, it's pretty good, and it's holding up, and it's, you know, it's out to 9 months. It's great. And so how much longer? It's going to, you know, we don't know, but the expectations are it's strong and durable, lasts a long time. So they haven't seen it pooping out yet. And so that's good news. That being said, your immune system has been changed forever in a way, and your immune system doesn't forget. It's part of the way the immune system works, that it's got a memory that it's going to keep against that spike protein if it's the mRNA vaccine. And so that's sort of where we are right now. It works against the virus we got right now. It seems to be holding up as far as we can see, but the future is remains to be measured. They're going to measure the immune response and see if it takes up over 12 months, 16 months, etc.
When will this end? When will we, or will we ever go back to normal as far as a society and not have to wear masks and run around? I know personally there's been not a lot of issues with the flu because everybody's been either getting COVID or has been wearing a mask. So in general, you can talk about that too. But when are we going to get through all this nonsense?
Yeah, so we're in a pandemic right now. We've all hunkered down, hidden in our houses, worn masks and that sort of thing. And so a lot of these things like influenza, annual influenza season didn't show up last year in North America, hardly any cases. And the same thing for, like, there's RSV in babies. It's the #1 cause of pneumonia and killer in babies. And it didn't show up. But now we got RSV showing up all over the place in the summer. That's not the RSV season. season. So you got people, you got infections going on that are stronger or a different time than we saw before. So we're gonna have to cope with that somewhat. So we've got RSV plus COVID in the hospitals going on with the kids. As time goes on, more of us will be infected. More of us infected or vaccinated. So presumably the virus will change, hopefully to become less virulent and become more like one of our also ran respiratory viruses that we have out there. And we'll cope with it. As long as our hospitals don't get swamped, we'll cope with it. And so I could see that a lot of times when the winters come along, a lot of people are going to wear masks, and I think you're still going to have the people who point fingers at you and say you're stupid, and then it won't be any different. But I think we're a resilient group, but it's not going to decimate society. 1% of us are going to be dead.
Yeah, it's still scary, but
from this pandemic. Yeah, so you don't want to be within that 1%, and you also don't want to be damaged with long COVID. So not to trivialize it, but I think you have to take it pretty seriously right now. You can't let it run. Like they tried to let it run early on, and right now Florida's view and Texas' view is let it run. I think they don't seem to be that clear about what they're saying, but I think their view is we can handle it. And so I'm hoping they're right. But right now they're pushing their healthcare to the limits, and so it doesn't look like they're right now, but they haven't busted the system yet. But they're sort of saying we can't run scared, we got to just face it. I think that's a little blasé. I think a lot of people are going to hurt that don't have to. But at some point, we're going to be vaccinated or immune from infection, and hopefully we'll be dealing with it and not so we won't have a worry in our healthcare system that we will be able to take care of everybody who's sick with COVID or car accidents or whatever.
Yeah. Earl Brown, University of Ottawa, virologist. Thanks so much for coming on. It's a depressing topic, but it needs to be spoken about. So I appreciate your time.
Good to talk to you, Robert.